And the recording has started, but I'll announce to everybody.
Hi, everyone. Say hello in the chat. It's good to see everyone.
So Lisa, yes, I forgot she does know. You guys do know each other because you're the PeopleSoft people.
Oh, Lisa and I go way, 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 way back.
To the AOL days.
Well, CompuServe, baby.
Oh, CompuServe, that is going back. I love it.
Not even sure I know what that is.
Oh, well, you're a baby, so that's why. CompuServe, that's a long time. So you're in Toronto today, Jason?
I am, Toronto. And it is gorgeous.
Oh, nice. Good.
Asheville?
I'm in Asheville. You keep saying you're going to come see me, but you haven't. So
August 1st.
Really?
Yep.
Where? All right. I'm putting it on my calendar right now.
August 1st, I'll be at Biltmore.
Sweet. Yeah, the
Hi, everyone.
The Chihuly exhibit's there.
Everybody, if you can share your open enrollment oopsies as you're coming in, that would be wonderful.
Unless, of course, all your open enrollments have been, perfect. Then you can just brag in the chat. Feel free.
Yes.
Leah, we don't see you on video.
Man, thank you. All this time I'm talking, I thought I was on video.
There we go. Well, I thought it was you were waiting for your eye drops to kick in.
It takes seconds. Thank goodness.
You love me, don't you? What would you do without me in your life?
I don't know. Seriously.
Leah, can you define an oopsie?
Yes.
Okay.
I was going to say, some people might use that word.
I can give
Not a
mine.
onesie.
An oopsie is something that negatively affects somebody else, another employee, people data. So,
Oopsie.
Oopsie.
Like, oops.
That's what we're talking about in this context, right? People.
Exactly. Lisa and I met in 1966. You see that?
1966?
Oh, 96. Sorry.
96. I was like, 1966. I was like, I don't recall.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Did you guys work together then? Is that where the PeopleSoft connection comes in?
Leah, sometimes you just have to move on. Like you don't need to ask all these questions. Sometimes there's private information that shouldn't be shared.
Oh, that's private. Okay. Okay. All right. So it's 2:02. I think we should kick things off as we're also waiting for others to join. So this call is being recorded. And we've already kind of kicked off the recording, as you know, as you've been joining. This is our first series of our several lunch and learns that we're having this summer, and I'm really excited to kick things off. For those who don't know me officially, I'm Leah Joyner. I'm the founder of HCM Tech Advisory, and we provide HR technology services to our clients, which include system selection, implementation oversight, and optimization, and then benefits administration and HR consulting. So a little bit about my background. I started right out of college at Deloitte, and I have somebody who I worked with back then over 20 years ago on this call. And I started doing actuarial evaluations. I have a math background. And then from there, I started doing pension not pension, but I started with pension. Then I moved over to health and welfare plans, designing plans, helping clients with cost projections. And from there, the past 12 years of my career, I've concentrated on technology. I worked for a company called LifeWorks, where I learned how to do code. And we were configuring very large clients' benefit systems. And while I was there is when I learned that there was a space and a need for somebody to be the client advocate. So there's the technology piece, and then there's the employer. So the vendor is selling the system, the employer is buying the system, but there needed to be somebody who's helping the employer. Do you even need this system? Is it right for your organization? Why do you need it? When's the right time, et cetera? So that's what we do at HCM Tech Advisory. And I am so excited to introduce my fellow guest speaker today. She's a great friend of mine and colleague, Holly Larson. She's a technology consultant at USI. And Holly, I'm going to let you introduce yourself a little bit.
Well, great. Thanks, Leah. Yeah, so I have been also in the industry for over 20 years. My background's more on the vendor side. I've worked for companies I'm sure you've heard of, many of them, ADP, Dayforce, formerly Ceridian, Benefit Focus as one, Empyrean. I also have worked in the research field, working for a company that is now part of Gartner. So my background is a little bit different than Leah's, and so I've come from the tech side, and I've been in the consulting area for over 6 years, working with clients specifically to do some of the same things that Leah is talking about, really looking at the overall HR technology landscape, if you will, and helping optimize that, finding the right solutions. So specifically around human capital management, technology, and benefits administration primarily. And the way we met is actually from, it's really about a year or so ago in the digital world at a meetup with our other friend here. So Leah, I'll just flip it over to you again. So we met, online at a digital meetup. Not as cool as it sounds, maybe, but we like it.
Yeah, it was almost a fluke the way I discovered the LeapGen digital meetup. When I started doing my own consulting, I was looking for people in this space who I could learn from, who were like-minded. So I was just Googling technology meetups, and I saw this meetup where there were only 2 people on it. It was Jason and Jess's picture, and no one else was signing up on this meetup. So it took me a few weeks because I was honestly afraid to sign up to a meetup where no one else was on it. So one day I just signed up, and oh my gosh, like it was a whole group of thousands of people on this meetup. And so I met Jason, who leads this LeapGen. It's not called LeapGen anymore. It's called Now of Work, powered by Mercer. And I just loved just listening to you. Jason is a huge mentor of mine in the space. If you don't know Jason Averbook, please follow him after this presentation today. I learned so much from you, and I'm just so honored to introduce you. So Jason is a leader in the technology space. He's a global technology leader for Mercer, and helps with transformations from HR technology and digital transformations. And Jason, I'll let you talk a little bit about what you do.
Thanks. No, awesome, man. So I'm going to put a link into the meetup. For those of you that aren't part of the meetup, it's every Friday. It's about 3,700 people every Friday, and all we do is get together and talk about the world of HR, the world of work, and the joys of being human. Really quickly, I've been in this space for a long time. Not going to go into a ton of detail on the long time, but I started in the DOS and mainframe world. Had the opportunity to write the industry's first Windows application. Went on to do a lot of different things at PeopleSoft, and then really for the last 20 years have been building services organizations and helping organizations with transformation, and now doing a ton of work in the generative AI space. So really excited to be part of the group here. and so proud that Leah and Holly are putting this on today, and proud to know that I could help a little bit just based on them meeting in the meetup. Our meetup really is interesting. We've actually had people get married in the meetup. We've actually had people that have gone into business together in the meetup. We've had over 100 different people placed in new jobs from the meetup. We've had 3 books written from people in the meetup. So really, really cool group of people. And we started it the Friday of COVID. That sounds weird to say, but we started it the Friday of COVID when I was scared to death that everyone was going to be isolated and not be able to ever talk to each other again. And we've been doing it every Friday ever since. So thank you so much, Leah and Holly, for having me, and thank you for being part of the community.
Absolutely.
Of course. Thank you. So
it really is fun. And I joined shortly after it started during COVID, and it really was a great connection. And that is how Leah and I met, because we were thinking about maybe starting our businesses together, right? And then they ended up being kind of parallel. So for anyone that any Friday, you all should absolutely join. I learn something every time I'm on, every time.
same. And they are recorded, by the way. So if you're not able to attend at 1 p.m. on Friday Eastern time, you can always listen to the recording.
All right. So
that was our surprise guest speaker.
All right. So we are talking about OE, and I know we're talking it's summer, or you're all getting excited about our vacations, but are you ready for OE yet? And if you're not, that's okay. We are starting to get questions already from our clients. I know Leah probably is too, because a lot of times we have some client overlap. If you're ready, great. That's fabulous. You can jump on and start telling us what you're doing. If you're not, that's okay. Or if you're somewhere in between, we would love to hear, and you can either use the QR code, or you can go on slido.com and respond. We'd love to see just where you are in this process.
Hey, Holly, you know that my whole life I spend trying to break down acronyms.
Oh, that's right. I used them, didn't I?
Are we talking about organizational effectiveness here? What's OE?
Well, this OE is open enrollment, but it does help with organizational effectiveness, because if you have a successful OE, then your organization is going to be much more effective. So in this case, one OE leads to another OE. But yes, thank you for that, Jason. I'll try not to use acronyms or jargon.
No, they're good. I was just playing with you. I always love when I see acronyms.
I know, they're fun. Well, it looks like most people, and this is kind of what we expected. Most people are either thinking about it, maybe in the Southern sense, fixing to get ready for OE, open enrollment. Looks like some of you are already ahead of the curve. Nicely done. You'll have to share your tips and tricks with us as we move on. All right, let's go forward and start talking about what you need to do to plan to get ahead. So a good place to start really is thinking about what you did last year, what worked, what didn't work. That's always a good thing to, to kind of take stock. And I encourage my clients to, even as you go through, take notes, because what I know it's painful sometimes to take that pause because you're in the heat of it, but that's really the best time to do it. What are you going to do? Do you offer new plans this year? Do you need to identify some new carriers? And you want to have some check-ins, some milestones with clear goals and timelines so you stay on track. Leah?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you 100%. Yeah, I don't have anything else to add to this slide.
Okay.
Keep going. Okay. So this is me. So overview of open enrollment huddles. If I had to put huddles in buckets, I would say 4 buckets. You got your system errors, you got your communication issues, data, and then your deadlines. So I can't stress enough, when you're planning, put your planning in those 4 buckets and you'll be good. So in the next slide, how do we even start? How do we start this whole planning process? For me, I would say you're starting with your benefits consultant or your benefits broker. That's where it starts. So Holly talked a little bit about looking at last year, what went well, what didn't. Okay, so you have that. Then you sit down with your benefits broker or your consultant, and now you're planning the open enrollment, the timing of renewals, because when you're getting those renewals, that's where everything else starts and goes down from there. So your renewal timelines, what is the enrollment platform that you're using? You may like what you have. Are you using a full HCM system where you already have it integrated, or do you have a standalone benefits administration solution that you're using? Are you in the middle of implementing? All of this stuff, you really need to be speaking with your benefits consultant because they're the ones, they need to know this stuff. A lot of times brokers, depending on what you're doing with your plans, they actually know some plans, depending on the kind of system that you have, if it's a complicated plan design, it may not work, believe it or not, in some standalone benefit system, even HCM systems. So these are conversations that you want to start having ahead of time. And your benefits consultant, to me, I think is where it starts. Okay, so system planning. So once you've planned with your benefits consultant, then the next thing is the system, your HRIS checklist. What are those vendor timelines? So we talked about your vendor, system vendor. It could be somebody externally, or it could be somebody internally, or you may have hired a consultant to help with this process. You want to establish all of those timelines. So you have your system timeline. You need to know, first of all, who's configuring the system, but beyond that, who's testing it. To me, I feel like the testing piece is missed, and it's if you don't test, you're not going to succeed, honestly. I mean, I just have to say, you want to test that system and you want to designate a tester, right? The carrier timelines are also somehow not discussed. You want to integrate that. When are the carriers expecting that EDI file? Or if it's a new benefit, they may want a spreadsheet versus an EDI. So all these discussions, and your broker can help you with this. A lot of times they're the ones getting these timelines and working them out with the carriers. Blackout dates. So a lot of times clients and employers, I guess I should say, don't think about the blackout dates, or they forget as they're planning for open enrollment. And what that means is when you send that file of open enrollment election files to the carriers, you want to have a very good plan on what's happening with any changes that happen in the system. Life event changes, let's say there's a marriage that happens. Where is that change going to be made? Because if you're making that system in the system, it could overwrite the open enrollment file that's already been provided to the carrier. So coordinating those dates are key. And then the last piece, and this was my oopsie, is the payroll piece. Especially if you don't, even if you have a system that connects with payroll, you really want to include the payroll team in these discussions. When do they expect that file, that initial deductions file, and who's going to be making those updates in the payroll system? So in a nutshell, I would say those are key items that you want to put in your planning. So I see Jason has a question. Doesn't the HRS do this automatically? Yeah. Okay. So you will hear, very good. You'll hear vendors. I mean, every system says that their system is integrated, right? You'll never hear a vendor that doesn't say it's not one solution. It's not, it's all integrated, but there's so much that's happening in the background. Not every, even if it's integrated, what does that really mean? Right? So that doesn't mean anything.
Right. And I had a client that they thought that the payroll vendor had everything integrated, like you said, and that the payroll deductions were going to, this was last year, from open enrollment to the new plan year. They had a payroll end date on, I'm going to say it was December 27th, as I recall. And then the first payday of the year was like the first. I mean, it was just the way that the year went, the pay period and the end date. And they, for some reason, the 2024 elections somehow did not carry over for one pay group, and it reverted to their 2023 elections just because of the way the pay date cut off. It was something that was configured. So that testing that you mentioned really needs to be thorough. And I noticed someone said test, test, test. So yes, absolutely. You need to
This
test.
is Jason.
Yeah,
Yes,
it
thank
was
you.
just, it happens. And it was just one pay group out of all of them. So it's just, it's quality assurance. Inspect what you expect, right?
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I find that some consultants are almost afraid to tell their clients that they need to test the system. I mean, as an employer, I wouldn't trust, if I was an employer, yes, I'm hiring somebody to configure my system, but I know my data more than anybody that could come in and help me with this. So I highly recommend that you test the system. You know your data more than everybody, the changes that you made, the expectations. You can break the system. You know all these secrets that somebody from the outside doesn't necessarily know.
Absolutely.
So this slide is talking about open enrollment planning and timeline. Begin with the end in mind. So when I plan really for anything, even for me personally, I think about where am I heading, and then I start planning backwards. Like, what does success look like? And then I go backwards from there. So with open enrollment planning, your success is you want employees to have their ID cards way before the effective date. So let's say the effective date is January 1st. Maybe you're shooting for by mid-December, you want everybody to have their ID cards. What does that look like? Going backwards, did you confirm? You want to make sure you confirm that the carriers received the enrollment files. I was working with a client, the case study, who the carriers never received their enrollment file last year. And that's not the only client. It happens often. And the way you confirm is not just sending the EDI file. You have to actually confirm. Did you receive it? And they need to confirm, whether it's in writing, in an email, you can call them. That is a big miss that I see. Confirm the dates that the carriers will need those files. Which format do they need those files? So just working backward from this planning. Believe it or not, some carriers, if you have a new plan, and let's say you have an EDI feed already, and you're just adding another plan, like let's say it's a new dental plan, they'll actually ask for that new plan in an Excel spreadsheet and then do the EDI, the building later. It's just, to me, I don't know that makes sense, but maybe it allows more time to building while you provide that file initially. So those are things that you need to really have figured out in your planning. Who will configure it? Who's going to test the system? We talked about testing. Who will provide the renewal details? How will that be provided? I'm sure, Holly, you can probably add other things to this timing. But yeah.
Yeah, these are the major milestones. But it's if you think about these, there'll be some other things that you'll have. I mean, the communications and especially if you're offering new plans, those kinds of things. But these are the big milestones to make sure you get where you want to be in time. All right.
Yeah, there's some really good comments.
Yes, getting on that calendar early.
Lisa said, get on the vendor's calendar early. Don't wait until every detail has been decided. Very true.
And we're going to talk about that a little bit later too. Are there any other questions? Let's see. I saw a few things in chat. And we've got the Q&A area. I'm going to check that really quickly.
Oh, I love Jason's comments. If a third-party OE blows up, your job and reputation are on the line. Highly visible disaster. Very true.
Yes. Yes, for sure. Okay, so we've got a question here.
Okay.
So yeah, for a small private college, and the annual enrollment is off cycle, so in April. So when should they start beginning their planning? The renewal process, you have to the plan renewals in July. So really, it doesn't really matter what time of year it is, but I appreciate the off cycle because people think of it a little bit differently sometimes. Most, like 80%, I guess, of the U.S. organizations, corporations, public, private, whatever, 80% are fall enrollments, right? So with a January 1 renewal. But even if you're off cycle, the planning process that we just went through takes about 90 days. And then the actual open enrollment and the event, getting it all done is another 90 days. So it's really, when you think about it, that's half the year, right? You've got 3 months of prep and 3 months of execution. So if you are looking at an April open enrollment event, then you would want to start that planning in January for a July 1 or a July plan year, right? That's the timeline. Would you agree, Leah?
I would say you need at least 6 months to plan for between planning and your effective date.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, at least, depending on, even larger clients start planning earlier.
And getting on that vendor calendar early makes sense. A lot of vendors that we work with on a regular basis, they start that, they should be starting those conversations and scheduling those meetings with you now. And if you haven't heard from them, feel free to be proactive, or if you are working with a consultant, have them facilitate that conversation for you. All right, I think we can go ahead and move on if there's no more questions.
I think Julie had a great comment about your platform provider providing you a test platform prior to OE go live.
Yes, absolutely.
That should be, but not every, I mean, there's a lot of systems that don't even have that, which was kind of surprising to me. They don't have a test platform to provide their clients.
Yeah, and yeah, both Julie and Lisa made some great points. Like the early coordination with other departments, and we do talk about that. There's a lot of stakeholders, right? It's not just all on HR and benefits, because let's face it, these are things that impact all the employees. So there's a lot riding on the success, which comes up our question. If you all want to type this up in chat, how do you define success during the of open enrollment process? How do you define it? Because there's a lot at stake, whether it's a success or not. And as Jason reminded us, it could be your job.
And we can, you and I, so please type in chat how you define success. I can say that for me, success for open enrollment, having minimal issues to no issues, the less you can minimize the blow up and the issues, to me, that's success. And how do you do that? You test the system. I mean, number one, and you plan and you test.
Yes. I think from the way I've looked at it has always been kind of from the employee experience side. I guess, like, again, we have the different lenses, right? You're coming at this. And I feel like if the employees understand their benefits, they actually understand them, and they are able to choose plans, that plan that best fits their needs and the needs of their dependents, and they're able to understand the voluntary benefits that are available to them, and have things that are meaningful to them and affordable. That, to me, is a successful open enrollment. If they're able to truly benefit and take advantage of what's available to them. that to me is a successful open enrollment experience. So to me, I look at it from the employee perspective and administrator too, because if you've done a good job communicating that and having thoughtful communication and putting it all together in a way that makes it easy to enroll, and then that's a successful experience to me.
Agree.
All right.
Agree.
So depending on your definition, who's responsible? And with this one, we'd like you to use the QR code again or the Slido, and then just key in your answer right here on the screen, because we want to see we want to see your thoughts all together and share them. So I'm going to do it too. I want to take a picture and see what you all think.
Don't be shy on this one. Who is responsible for OE processes?
And if you think it's more than one, if you think it's more than one, yeah, well, the carriers certainly play their role, don't they?
I like the employer answer.
Oh, we got three more look like are coming in. Nice.
I like these are great answers.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, looks like some more people are typing, so I'll give it another second or two. I'm curious. Whoa. I like it. I like it. All right.
Does that mean we have a few carriers? Carriers are also in there? We've had several carriers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it looks like it takes a village, clearly.
It does.
It does.
But who holds everybody accountable?
Yep.
You have to have accountability, right? Like.
So let's talk about that as we move on. We'll keep all this in mind. Owning that success, Leah.
Okay. All right. Succeed by owning the OE process. So you saw the previous, what everybody put in there. I say the employer owns this, whether it's your HR team, whoever is in charge under the employer's umbrella. As an employer, I would want to make sure that I succeed, right? What does that mean? I'm holding my broker accountable, my consultant that I've hired accountable, your carriers. I would say you want to manage that process if you want to succeed, right? And what does that look like? Plan ahead. Make sure you have somebody testing the system from internally because you're the one who knows that data. I'm not saying that the vendor shouldn't test. Of course, they should test. But you want to also test that system. Communicate so that everybody's on the same page. Evaluate how the process went so that do you need to improve? What can you do better next year? What do you need to implement differently? Evaluate the process so that you can start there from your planning, and then ongoing, if you want to make sure everything is accurate, you want to audit those bills, especially that first bill that comes in at the beginning of the year. You can't miss, if you don't look at that one, you're going to have issues. So audit your bills. Succeed by owning the OE process. That would be my take on that. I don't know if Holly or Jason, you want to add anything here?
No, I agree.
Okay. Let me see the comment. Okay. So reviewing the data post OE, what does that look like? Talked a little bit about So data accuracy is another huge issue in this OE process. If you don't review that data, you're going to have issues. What does this look like? So the way I do this is right after everybody has enrolled and before you send those files to the carriers, before you release the EDI files to go, you want to do like an analysis, compare with last year. Do these enrollments look similar? Look for issues. Issues come in the EOI, evidence of insurability. Look at that. Make sure you have a report for that and the enrollment are looking right. Look for things like HSA versus high deductible health plans. How many people enrolled in that and didn't enroll in an HSA? That to me is maybe a communication issue, maybe an error in the system. You want to catch these things a little bit early before this data is taken to the carrier. Nothing is right? I hate to say that. You want to catch the issues. We're all human. Somebody is touching all of this, humans, and we make mistakes. So review the data before it goes to the carrier.
So, excuse me, some of you all mentioned this in the chat and we've talked about it, but you do want to schedule, just like we scheduled a planning meeting, you want to schedule a meeting afterwards. And again, that can be scheduled with your broker, your consultant, or some of the vendors will actually proactively schedule these meetings post OE to review and make sure that things went well and what didn't go well, to provide that continuous improvement process, and to talk about what that employee experience was. And again, I always encourage my clients to kind of keep a journal, if you will, about that experience, because the best time to do that is to do it in the moment, because you're not going to remember. Let's face it, there's a lot going on, especially if you have a fall OE like most people do. A lot happens that time of year, right? There's the holidays, there's year end, there's all the things we were just talking about with the carriers, and you're looking at all that data. It's really hard to remember this time of year what you were doing last October. I don't know what I had for lunch yesterday, quite frankly, so I'm sure not going to remember what I was doing last year. So it's really important to do that. I love that somebody's comment about your problem children. Yeah, you do remember the problem children, but you may not remember the other things you need to remember. So we're going to talk about some of these things. And again, the things that those problem children, it may be an issue with the technology, right? There's some areas that we need to talk about, and Leah mentioned it early on. We have our full suite, HCM, or human capital management, which often have great technology built within. They do have, a lot of them have the payroll, because that's your system of record, if you will, the payroll, the time, and they collect they get the deductions from benefits. They will have a benefits administration module that sometimes it's simply an enrollment tool, let's face it, or sometimes it has some functionality. And depending on your complexity of your organization and the plans, that might suit your needs, or you may need something that's more robust, a bin admin standalone solution. And there's a lot of them out there. And in fact, we've got some folks on the line. I see Julie, think with BenTech is here. And then when you have, there's people like, you've heard them, many of them, PlanSource, bswift, Benefit Focus. There's lots and lots that have their specialties. And if you have you need more functionality, some detailed decision support, defined contributions, those types of things, wellness credits, that may be something. So depending on where you are in your evolution and the type of organization you have, that might be something to consider. And you can work through that as part of your HR tech strategy. If you want to go to the next slide, please. So the way I begin any of these conversations with my clients is to take a look at these three big buckets: people, processes, and technology, because these dynamics, they're dynamic and they're constantly, because of that, things change over time. So one of those technologies may be working well for a very long time, but things change. Your business model may have outgrown your technology. Your processes may have changed. And if you haven't let your vendor know that you have a new process, hey, guess what? It may not be supporting it as well as it had previously. Maybe it's just a simple tweak or a way of doing things, or maybe you have outgrown it. Talk to your vendors about that. Talk to your consultants about that, and they can help you work through that process. Or it could actually be a people problem, right? It could be that you're not talking the same language. Your HR tech consultant can help you with that, because we speak tech, we speak HR, we all think we're talking English, and sometimes we're not. We can act as an interpreter for you. Another issue that's going on in our industry is there's a lot of turnovers, both on the vendor side and maybe in your house too. That can impact things. But we have a very young HR tech population. We all know it. There's just not as many 20. There are a lot of 20-year-olds, but there's not a lot of experience in that, right? So tech people, HR tech professionals are younger and younger. 2 years ago, the 2022 Sapient survey said that this demographic had 10 years or less experience in HR tech. Okay. Last year, the 2023, it was 1 to 3 years experience. That is a huge, huge gap in knowledge and experience. And so as you're having a hard time hiring people, so are HR tech vendors. So we as consultants spend a lot of time educating our clients and helping them through these processes. You're a new HR person on your team may or may not have ever been through an open enrollment. They may or may not have ever been through a selection project, or they may have inherited some technology that they don't have experience with. So they may just assume it's the technology that's a problem when it really isn't. So there's a lot to consider as we all work through this together to have a successful open enrollment, for example, or to move through an evaluation process. All right. Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, very well said. I was just going to say, when we had our retreat in May, we talked a little bit about this and how the technology vendors, they're struggling internally with, they don't have teams, turnover. And what came out of that is, which was, a bit humbling for me, honestly, because I wasn't thinking that way, is just having patience with the vendors, because they're going through the same thing that we're going through, lacking employees, or they're lacking the experienced employees. So being a little bit patient with a vendor and separating the difference between a vendor who's not meeting, what your SLAs with a vendor are, service level agreements, versus is it because that they just don't have the team, and just being a little bit patient. So that's what I got from that.
Yeah, I think that you're right. I mean, you said it yourself, we're all human. And I've noticed that some vendors aren't putting the SLAs in that they had in previous years, certainly before pre-pandemic. And I think part of it is the lack of experience. They're doing other things, other measurable things, and they're working to be flexible, but they're not putting in the same SLA. So you do bring up a valid point.
Yeah. Any questions up to this point?
I don't see any.
Okay.
So
are you struggling with an experience? Okay, I see some. Oh, that's you, Holly. Okay.
Yeah, I was asking the group in general.
So what's showing up on this screen is it's a case study from a client who did all this stuff actually that we're talking about. I didn't even think about it using this client as a case study, but they actually did everything right. So they experienced a very hard open enrollment last year. And for 1/1/2024 effective date, they wanted a different experience. So they sat down with their broker after OE to kind of go over that experience, what went wrong, what they wanted to improve. And they realized that they needed a consultant to come in and help them with planning and managing the vendor, essentially. So that's how HCM Tech Advisory was hired to do the open enrollment oversight for this client. The client is Sparq, which is a growing IT company. They specialize in digital engineering outsourcing services. And when I started working for them, they had about 900 employees, projecting to grow to 5,000 lives within, the next couple of years. So they were growing and having issues with they had a standalone benefits administration system, and they had a completely different HCM solution where they house their payroll, applicant tracking, et cetera. So came in, started planning. So I started from what the issues that they discussed were issues from last year. So planning so that they don't have the same issues again. For example, making sure that we reach out to the carriers and we get an actual confirmation that they received their enrollments so that there's no access to care issues, when the effective come January. So did some planning with them, did a ton of vendor management. Really was one of the big issues. It's very similar to what we're talking about. Young team, young in experience, and a lot of having to teach and train the vendor, which is interesting. So I was giving the vendor, direction on what they needed to do for EDI files, reach out to the carriers, confirm, whatever. But that's what I was hired to do, and it's what I love to do. And all of this to say we had 0 issues. I made sure that the system was tested, effective vendor management, problem solving for this client. They said that this was the most prepared that they had ever been for open enrollment. And, in conclusion, if you plan right from the beginning and if you stay on top of the vendor, it's called vendor management. You just have to do it and you test that system, it works. So that's the case study and this is yours, Holly.
Yes. Yes. So mine is also, this is definitely one of those oops moments that a client had, really through no fault of their own. They planned appropriately. At the end of 2022, they had signed with a vendor for the full HCM suite. So, the core for sure, payroll, the time, and benefits. And they were well into their implementation with the HR, excuse me, the payroll, HR, and time. But a lot of the things that we talked about just a few slides ago with the turnover, the benefits team just simply did not have the resources to get their ben admin module implemented in time and deployed in time for an open enrollment event in the fall. So maybe about this time, maybe May, they came to me and said, Holly, we're not going to be able to get the bin admin in time. What can we do? So I introduced them to a reseller that actually had that was able to resell the same technology that was embedded in the human capital management. So the reseller was able to come in, the integrations were already built. They already knew the system. They did it every day, all day long. They were able to implement the technology, the same technology they were expecting, much more quickly, because they did have an experienced team and they were able to help them do it, got it done. Their open enrollment came off without a hitch, and they were also able to do it a short period contract, an 18-month contract. So it got them through that year and the following year, and everyone's happy. The dollars were able to be redeployed because the vendor realized the HCM vendor realized it was their issue. They all played nicely together. The dollars were reallocated. Everything went well last year, and they have no plans to even change it for 2025. So it's good to have a plan B, maybe a plan C to avoid those oops moments.
Yes,
yeah,
that are inevitable.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. So I'll look and see if there's any questions, but we did get a nice pro tip about inviting those problem children to participate in maybe a test environment to get them on your side. I thought that was a I liked that a lot. I liked it. I was like, yeah.
I like Lisa's comments.
Mhm.
Sorry. Lisa
No.
said a lot of clients that have a large hourly blue collar workers still assume they won't use or understand technology, which is crazy in 2024.
I know.
Yes, give employees more credit.
I know. What I do, Lisa, on those is I said, do your employees all have, a cell phone? And they're like, yeah, or a mobile phone. And they're like, yes. I said, why don't you just ask them how many of them play, do fan duel or, play the NFL games on, ask them if they play any of those games on their, and they're like, oh yeah, they do that at lunch all the time. I see them. I go, okay, they can do that. They can enroll in benefits online. And they're like, oh, I never thought of it that way. So you can, yeah, definitely you can reach them.
So Jason, you have a great comment at the end there. I wish he could come on and talk about this. I love that. Finding a vendor who already knows your industry will minimize the time you spend getting them up to speed.
Yeah, I bet Julie can speak to that.
Yes. Agree. I love that. No questions? No one has questions?
So here's one from someone had an HR benefits manager and a small textile manufacturer. It says we have about 250 employees working 2 shifts. So in that case, do you think we need a bin admin system or can we just use the one with our HR payroll system? Kind of getting back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago. And I would say, yeah, I would say that it depends on the organization. I mean, there's really no way to know enough about you right now. This is truly one of those it depends answers. And it would depend on a lot of things. I don't know enough about your organization to know, are you growing? Will you be expanding? Are you expecting to, acquire another company, or is, you're pretty steady? Do you have very complex plans, or if what you're doing working fine right now? I mean, your payroll system may be able to accommodate your HCM payroll may be able to accommodate it just fine. Or if you have some pretty complex things going on with your workforce, then you might consider a bin admin for your enrollment. It would all begin with a discovery. And when we go back to that whole people, process, technology conversation, that's where all of my consulting starts.
Yeah. And hopefully they have a system already.
Yes. And if you don't, then yeah, then
Then
that's
we
a
definitely
whole
need a system
conversation. Yes, absolutely.
But I agree with you. It depends as well. I mean, they may have a good bin admin. Sometimes, when clients say, well, let's just get everything in one system, I'm always like, that doesn't mean that you're going to like that just because everything is in one system. So choose what's most important. Do you want a good benefits administration system that your employees will like, that you already like? If that's important and you have complicated plans, I would say you definitely want a benefits admin system and then integrate it with a HCM system instead of trying to get everything in one solution because you may not like it.
True. And if that is something you want to learn more about, looks like we'll have an opportunity to catch up with you next month and we'll talk specifically about benefits administration vendors.
Yes. So this is the kickoff of our lunch and learn for the rest of the summer. Next one will be July 24th. We're going to be evaluating benefit admin vendors. Julie, that would be a good one for you. Everybody on this in this meeting will be a good one for you. In August, we're going to talk about implementing a system successfully. September is automating your benefits admin processes. And then in October, we'll talk about the trends in benefits and HR tech.
All right.
So that's what we have slated. So would really love to thank everybody. Thank you, Jason, for joining us today. This has been great. Really excited to kick these off. Please follow Holly and Jason. Let me try to put everybody's LinkedIn in the chat. Thank you. Thank you. I'm seeing the chats.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Here are the LinkedIn. And Jason provided everybody his now of work, I believe, right?
Yes, yes, he did.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Here's his LinkedIn as well. And I'm sure everybody should have mine, but here's mine. Would love for you guys to follow us. Connect with us. Thank you. One question, is HCM now the replacement for HRIS? Ha, Jasmine. Ha, isn't this something we talked about
We did
earlier?
talk about that. Yeah, we did talk about that one point. HRIS is part of the HCM. So HCM stands for Human Capital Management, and it encompasses the whole hire to retire suite. When we talk about core HCM, that's the HR, payroll, time, and often benefits. Benefits may or may not be included. It depends on the vendor. Sometimes they include the benefits, or sometimes they have that as an option. But it would be payroll, HR, and
Maybe time,
mhm.
HRIS,
Yes.
payroll.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then
it's payroll centric. It's very mumuch payroll centric. So that's the whole system of record. Now you can run the HRIS separately. If you don't have an HCM suite, you can run those things, all from your ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning. I'm not going to use acronyms. So there you go. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and I mean, when I think of HRIS, when I think of human capital management system, it has everything, right? And then when I think of an HRIS system, it has payroll, it definitely has benefits, and there's some other pieces like it may have, I don't even think it has applicant tracking, but it has time and attendance. So it's just a piece of it. And we could give examples. I mean, a full HCM, it's like a Workday, UKG, right? And then an HRIS system. I mean, they're all becoming full HCMs, to be honest. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I can't think of anybody off the top of my head that doesn't have, even the ones that just started with a little bit, now offer everything.
They have everything. Like, I was gonna say something like Paycom or Paylocity, but they're offering everything. What a lot of these companies are doing, though, they're integrating all these solutions, right? They're buying other systems, they're buying applicant trackings and combining them. So,
right. But there are some that don't, like Paycom.
They're white labeling, exactly.
They have all their own technology. iSolved has all their own technology. So there are some that have all their own.
Right. But some have their own, and some white label, and some are purchasing them.
Correct. All right. Well,
yes. Paylocity owns Paycor white label. Perfect. I think those are two different companies.
Yes, Paycor, they are. Paylocity and Paycor both. Okay. bSwift. Paylocity is going back to its own in the process of, but they both had bSwift for their bin admin for a while. So, but two separate companies.
Yes.
You'll have to come back on the 24th and you'll hear all about it.
This was great, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm so glad that you guys were able to connect through the chat.
All right. Thank you.
All right, we will end. Thank you all. Have a great afternoon. Bye.
Bye.